head out. I think we're gonna go. Obviously, I don't think she makes it, or that's my assumption. But she's like, I think I'm gonna go. This doesn't feel right, right? And then there's another quote, which I think it was maybe by Ruben, and he says, "I'm gonna call the sheriff," right? Which is like, I probably wouldn't call the police. Like, not necessarily. Like, maybe, but probably not, especially in a place where I don't feel already comfortable by, like, the inhabitants, right? So, like, even just in that, like, seeing the responses to what's going on in the movie through these different lenses based on, you know, their demographics and who they are racially, you know, identity and such, I think it's really fascinating.
I think,
okay. Yeah.
I think discovering that instinct is really important too, which is what I think us as Black people face on a day-to-day basis, is having an instinct of, is this safe? Is this safe? Can I stay here? Do I need to leave this situation right now? And I love that was represented so well just in the trailer, and you feeling and that vibe in the movie, which I think is something that parallels really beautifully with Get Out. And, you know, you were talking, Tonya, about Get Out being a horror film, and I kind of think, horror, and I kind of think of it as like a thriller, but there's a fine line between the two. And would you consider Red Pill to be horror, thriller, both? Where would you sort of categorize it?
My daughter would say it's not a horror film because there's just not enough blood and kills. But my daughter, when we watch horrors together, she's happy if people are being chased by something and screaming, which I could care less. Being chased by something and screaming, and then people get killed, I don't care. I want to have something that I'm trying to figure out. Or like, I want to be trying to figure out what's going to happen. I need at least that. I mean, like I said, horror to me, you know what the monster is. You may not see the monster. You know the monster is probably going to win. But what is there some reason or some motivation, or is there something that they're going to try to do to stop the monster? Like a shark, Jaws was fantastic, but it wasn't that the shark was the scary thing. The people's response to the shark was the scary thing. And so for me, in a sense, Red Pill is kind of like that. It's definitely about how people don't listen to the Black woman's instinct. And how we as, quote, on the left, just keep thinking that everybody's on our side and we're going to win because we're the majority. I mean, that's literally like a line like in the movie. And I want to say that I just learned this fact in the past week, and I keep repeating it everywhere I go, that no Democratic president has won the majority of the white vote since Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act.
Wow.
Right.
So I feel like for people who are white, who are thinking their friends are on their side, I think that they mostly think of the people who are rabidly talking about Republicans and MAGA. There's a whole bunch of quiet ones who are saying nothing, and they're still not voting the way you vote. And because it's more than 50%, it's something like 56% of white people vote Republican, like that no Democrat has ever had. And so it's actually in their hands to decide if we're going to have a democracy.
Right. But then it always comes down to the question of, what do they get out of democracy and what do they get out of stifling democracy, right?
Well, like Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote The Warmth of Other Suns and won the Pulitzer, her new book, Caste, one of the sections, she talks about how what the current president, occupant of the White House, offers is a return to white sovereignty. And so where politicians seem to think that, people in, quote, red states are voting against their interests, they are actually not voting against their interests, because they're saying, I will take a short-term loss for the interest of maintaining white sovereignty over the long haul. And that is their number one priority.
Do you feel like you explore the theme?
Come on, second, Lilli, what do y'all think?
Getting it all in.
Yeah. Well,
What was your question, Ciara?
I was just gonna say, do you, because Chuck and Lilli and I were actually talking about like the fear of like white genocide, right? Like this like kind of made up mythical fear that people of color are out to destroy white people, right? And which is like the base, which people say is like the basis for the foundation of a lot of the like the racism and biases, prejudice, whatever we're dealing with. So like,
and there is the fact that melanin is a dominant gene.
Right. So like maybe it's even like inbred in us a little bit, you know, or in them, or, you know, whatever. Like what is it actually? Is it societal? Is it mythology? Is it, you know, actually a part of our biology that we want to, of course.
That. It's tribal, it's animal, it's we're animals, okay? People just forget that we're fucking animals, okay?
We're animals.
We eat, we fuck, we sleep, and that's what animals do.
Procreate.
Animals try to procreate and make sure that their shit, make sure they have their shit, and if they don't have their shit, they'll go and take someone else's shit. And that's
go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
And that is where we are, and we'll always be, because that's just how it is. And so the nuance of that in terms of governments and societies is that those in power do everything they can to keep it, and will not, and very reluctantly give it up. It had to be wrenched from their cold, bloody hands. That's just how it is.
I want to go back to you saying about eating and fucking. I was reading a book called The Woman's Evolution, and she has this theory that she posits in a big long book to explain it, that she does not believe there is an incest taboo. She thinks that's a modern day invention. And her theory of that is that, you know, pre-Columbian, Paleolithic, Neolithic man did not know anything about DNA. So how could they have a taboo, incest, prohibition about that? But when they look at, you know, when they've been able to interview tribes that are still living closer to the land and sort of hunter-gatherer tribes, what they found is, what they did have is that fully 75% of the women in their tribe were off limits to most of the men in the tribe on pain of death. Okay, so since they don't know anything about genetics, you know, what could make them say these people are off limits? You don't do that to them. And her theory is that what the primitive species of humans did recognize is two very fierce hungers: the hunger for food and the hunger for sex. And whenever they interviewed these tribes, they found that when they talked about themselves, they described themselves as man. Everybody else was an animal. So you could have sex and eat people from other tribes.
Oh, whoa.
It didn't do it to your own, because you all were man, they were animals.
Oh, wow.
And so I feel like we kind of have that happening right now, where there's people who feel like we're the humans and the rest of you all are not. And we can do anything we want to you because we're the only man.
Right.
But of course, there isn't any like even scientific basis for the separations that we've created societally, right? Like culturally and society, like just the fact that some people were on this continent versus this continent, like literally we're all so much more genetically similar than we are disparate. Absolutely. So that's the thing that always is so infuriating about it, you know? White
was invented not 100 years ago. I mean, white is real new.
Yeah, Jefferson for it.
It's like, look, you know, somebody said, you know what? Let's make some of us white And then we can consolidate our power, and we'll make these rules that, you know, favor us. And if you're not white, you're fucked.
Right. Well, and Noel Ignatieff, who just recently passed, he talked about, I think it was called anti-whiteness or anti the concept of whiteness, because he's like, it's not real and it doesn't exist. And his proof of that was that in the olden days, you know, Irish people were not considered white until the Irish were collaborating with Black folk who were moving to the cities, right? And they were saying, hey, we're coming together. We're all going to live together, and then we'll be more than the people who are oppressing us or not allowing us to have what we want. And so the people who were oppressing all white people in America, they were saying, hey, Irish people, actually, you look like us enough, so you are actually also white too now. We're going to stop treating you like crap. We're going to stop putting out signs that say, you know, no potatoes and no, you know, whatever they said to people back then.
Remember, but there's that thing about the race. Capitalism is the cause of all of this.
Right.
Because capitalism racialized people. It didn't racialize people in terms of their melanin, but it racialized people. That's what allowed the Brits to starve 6 million Irish people. They dehumanized them.
Right.
You know, they just were like, you aren't like us, for the sake of how we can use you. And people forget that capital requires labor. Labor makes capital.
Right.
And so, but labor never gets the benefits of their capital. So the people at the top racialize any group of people to say, you are the mudsill, you are the bottom of this society on which all of the rest of it is built. And we need somebody at the bottom so we can build our castles to the top.
Absolutely.
Just like termites.
Of human nature and animal nature to create hierarchy in any way, right? Create levels that can allow one group to feel more important and powerful, which means another group has to feel less important and less powerful. And the easiest thing is to say, you don't look like me, so you're lesser than. And then but once, let's say the Irish people were like, wait a minute, we can be a part of the white group? Cool, all about it. That's great. We're white now.
And there's also something universal. Let's not forget about every tribe needing a nigger. The nigger is a very convenient word and places people in a specific light, and everybody, every group of people, generally speaking, it needs a nigger. It's
the Dalit people of India. That's what their place is. They're the bottom of the caste, and you know, one of the things Wilkerson talks about in Germany is once they made the Jews the bottom, and once they had, you know, killed off so many Jews, or the Jews had run away, then the Germans started turning on one another and looking at people who had brown hair or brown eyes and going, where did you, what's your ancestry? Can you be sure?
Yeah. It's you know, it's all about our lack. We haven't, the evolution of our societal habits and mores and rules and whatnot are way unevolved to what is possible in our hearts and what is possible in our higher aspect. We some people, we know about it, we feel it, but it's unachievable with the tools that we have, and using the path that we have chosen to take. It's just, we can't get there from here. It's like Einstein said, you can't solve tomorrow's problems with today's tools. You got to come up with better ways. First of all, we have to teach empathy. If we don't begin to understand the importance of teaching empathy, it's a waste of fucking time. Because that is the key to unlock potential and to end suffering and all these things that plague us. It's all about empathy and love. And you know, it sounds woo-woo to say it, but it's the goddamn truth. You know,
No, but there's science.
I didn't answer your question, Ciara, because you asked me about why this thing. So I feel like I'm really good at empathy. I have friends from every walk of life, and the movie's called Red Pill because I went deep into red pill communities. Unbeknownst to me, I had a red pill therapist. You know, people know red pill from the Matrix, but red pill has a whole, like, there's the red pill women and the red pill men and the red pill communities and red pilling somebody. And I spent a lot of time inside those subreddits. And as I said, I had a therapist who was doing that. So I feel like, I hope that I told this story from a perspective of empathy for both sides. I don't make a judgment in the storytelling. I just show you how I think it plays out in the world in this story. But I don't think that I don't paint anybody as a bad person. Of course, depending on your perspective, you're gonna pick one, but I don't think I, as the storyteller, do really, you know.
Which I always find those kinds of pieces to be, like, whether it's movies or theater or just books, it doesn't matter. Those are the ones that always interest me the most, because then it leaves me with all this self-reflection of, like, wait, I chose this. Why did I choose this? Or why did I think that this character was like the one that I associated with the most versus this one? Or, you know, especially when you get to hear the creator say, like, oh no, I'm just showing you what's here. And you made that judgment. And then you're like, oh, what does that say about me? Which I think that's the best kind of stuff, right? It's holding up the mirror. That's the job that we're all hopefully doing is, hey, this is a part of humanity. Look at it. What's it mean to you? How does it make you feel? What are you going to do about it?
Right.
You know?
Self-reflection and curiosity are perhaps the two most important tools for evolution, for personal evolution.
And I think
Go ahead, Lilli.
I think one of the most frightening things about 45 is not only his racism and bigot nature, is lack of empathy. And I think having of the free country being lacking in any form of empathy whatsoever is one of the things that truly scares me the most.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
What scares me the most is how, you know, I love it that we've had 100 consecutive days of uprisings in the country, and they're getting no press at all. And 93% of them have been peaceful. But still, when I talk to some of my friends, it's not on their, it's not in their news feed. Like, the things that are getting me upset all the time, they don't even know that it's going on. And I just finished watching The Social Dilemma, which is a new documentary on Netflix. And it's talking about how the algorithm is designed in such a way that it just wants to make money. So it needs more people to do something. So the algorithm has actually been growing these red pill communities.
Yes.
It's been growing them by saying, well, maybe these kind of people would like this. And so it's inviting people into these radical communities to say, well, let's put the anti-vaxxers and the QAnons and the this, and let's see. And it's just because it's trying to spread its web out to make more money for third parties that we don't know about. It has made these communities bigger than they could have ever been had the technology not existed.
100%.
Bit more about red pill communities. Like, my initial understanding of red pill is, like what you said, is from the Matrix, and I've done a little bit of research into sort of, you know, the underpinnings of all the different meanings and worlds that it encompasses. But can you speak a little bit more about red pill communities?
Sure. So if you were to go into a subreddit for the red pill women, they are women who in their home life, they have to be submissive. There's a set of rules that they have to follow, that the man is the dominant person and they have to submit to his rule, etc. The red pill men are competing, conquering, controlling, aggressive, that's an aspect of red pill communities. Then if you go into the manosphere, Ooh, there's like so many renditions, different variations of what that looks like. Now, red pilling has meant anything from like white supremacists or KKK people getting a job in a community and over time getting rid of everybody in that community so that everybody in there is like them. I mean, like there's a slogan, police and KKK, you know, all the way. These groups have infiltrated the highest levels of our authority in our country so that they are running things. And we see it with the gentleman in Washington that was executed by the federal government. They executed somebody. So, you know, we're talking about the red pilling of America. So much of our authority in the United States has, I'm going to back up. Because Lincoln chose to let Robert Lee go home with, quote, dignity, and because most of America was not for freeing the slaves, they were for keeping the Union together. The South has been slowly rising again forever, ever since the end of Reconstruction. So they've been waiting for this moment, and the signs and the prophecies, it's all there. You know, in those communities, the current occupant of the White House is called King Cyrus. We're going to have a new time period, the time before 45 and the time after 45. So as we see all this climate change and, you know, tornadoes and typhoons, this, for the Dominionists and the evangelicals, this is biblical prophecy. This is not something they want to stop. This is the coming of the Messiah. This is, you know, this is supposed to be like this.
Wow. Yeah. That's what they believe.
Yeah. Which is really tough to dismantle. I mean, just seeing the comments all over Instagram and Twitter, and you know,
what's needed in America is gene splicing, okay? Because racism is in the DNA of America. And so we got to find out which X, which Y, and which Q is in that double helix that is racism, and expunge it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the lines of the movie, it's one of my favorite lines of the movie, is Ruben Blades says, and this is a fact, that the Haitian Revolution is the one successful enslaved uprising that they won. And so what Ruben says is when the Haitian people created their constitution, the Constitution of Haiti says that you must renounce whiteness in order to be a citizen.
Wow.
Didn't have anything to do with the color of your skin, but you did not have identity as white in order to be a citizen of Haiti. And then the white character says, and Mother Nature's been punishing them ever since.
Mother Nature and all the other countries, all the other European countries and us.
So it is
when they had that revolution, the Americans came down on them, the French came down on them, the world came down on them.
So it's this identity politics that's just a little over 200 years old that is what the red pilling is, that whiteness is a form of property in these United States. It is a property, it's a card that entitles you to not wear a mask. It entitles you to do what you want to do. It entitles you to kill people. It entitles you to call the police to terrorize people. Once you get that card, you get a set of rights, and people don't want to give those rights up.
It's your social.
And the Irish and the Italian were invited in because actually the Communist Party came in and organized the sharecroppers and the poor whites. And because they were the majority and they were going to take over, it was like, oh, you know what? We're going to give you access to the white card. So now you can be above these people that you were joining with, because now we're going to give you access to those privileges.
Right.
So it is something that is used to divide and conquer people, even who have the same interests. The value that's placed on the white card is so great that people will often vote against what we think is their immediate interest because that card carries such a high value.
Right. It's a card and a weapon, right?
Yes. Class and wealth comes into play there too, because you can have the white card, but you could be lacking the class and wealth card, but you still think that that vote is for you when it's not. It's for the rich white people. But because you have the white card, you think that that is the best choice to go for when you're
in the club.
Why?
Right, because you're just temporarily poor.
Yeah.
You're eventually, you know, there were 2 Supreme Court cases that happened with a South Asian man who his country is very close to the Caucasus Mountains. And so he said, I can actually claim direct ancestry from the Caucasians, and a Japanese man who had extremely fair skin. And they both took separate cases to the Supreme Court to say, we should be entitled to this white card. And the Supreme Court said, no. Everybody knows Asian, Oriental people are not white, and everybody knows South Asian people aren't white.
Man, I guess, like, you know, if like being a card carrying member of a group is like really one of our strongest desires, like we need to make like the liberal group like more fun.
Well,
we need jackets, we need like cool fonts on our cards. Like what?
The distinction I always find interesting, at least it is to me, is that the left has something that the right does not have, and that is humor.
Sense of humor. Yep.
The left can be funny, and in a lot of different ways. The right, they don't really have humor.
But do you think that they think that they have humor?
Was funny sometimes, but you know, basically they're nerds.
Have you seen it?
They have humor. They think they have humor.
They think they do. That's what I'm saying. Because the Reddit things that I've seen, the scary Reddits I've been on, I feel like they really do believe, like, ha ha ha, shooting this guy, ha ha, that's hilarious. Yeah, the way that you teabagged him. You know what I mean? Like what? Like that's
their humor.
Let me say this: they lack wit.
There we go.
But they would say that about leftists.
I know. It'll always be the projection game, right? It's just like, which is exactly what Trump does, which is like the narcissism, borderline personality bull crap that he does, which is projecting all of his own things onto someone else. And as long as you do that, you are in some way creating like a little bit of a barrier of like, well, you got all these problems to fix. Don't come after me, you know, even though they're all actually your problems.
But we got to work together because democracy is based on the consent of the loser. And what we don't have anymore right in this moment in time is we will not get the consent of the, quote, minority in America right now.
Right.
And that is why our democracy is going to fall. It is going to. You know, the Civil War, they talk about Fort Sumter as being the first place that shots were fired, but skirmishes had been going on for years before that day. And we are in the midst of the Second Civil War right now.
Oof. Lilli, what do you think about that?
I was interested in what Papa was going to say. You were very animated about something.
I submit to you this, that this polarization that you see in society and in the world is the polarization of humankind and human mind. And I submit that those on one side are one half of that humankind brain, and those on the other side are the other half of that humankind brain. And it is a hive mind, if you will, seemingly at odds with one another, just as yin and yang seem to be at odds with one another. Each side contains a little bit of the other one, just like yin and yang does. And so what we are witnessing in the minutia is suffering, is conflict, is all of that. But in the larger picture we're watching something evolve.
Agreed. We are moving into what Aleister Crowley would call it's the new aeon. And in that new aeon, it's going to be a reconciliation of opposites. I think it's why we're seeing such a rise of gender nonconforming. In some of the great Iroquois nations, there were 26 genders. We all contain in us masculinity, femininity. Yes, when we can, but my sort of position about the left is we don't know how to reconcile our shadow. And so, we're so busy judging the right that we are not recognizing that everything that's in them is in us too. And
100%.
When we can reconcile that shadow side of them that is in us, we will be so much more powerful and we will be able to meet them. But as we are trying to claim that we are like higher, we have a moral hierarchy or something, or we're smarter or we're more this, not going to work. We have to reconcile the opposites inside of us.
And I think I'm finding in my circles that is the overwhelming like want and desire why people struggle so much with voting for Biden, because they're like, okay, we see you like saying you're going to do good things, but we've also known you to do bad things, and you like haven't really copped to those things. And when you don't do that, then you put us in this position where we have to choose the lesser of two evils. And it's like, well, how about we just come out and say, hey, I did some bad things and I'll learn from them. And now I want to be better. Like if someone said that to me, I mean, I feel like if Trump did that, like we would have him again for sure, because it is such a powerful, powerful statement. That is true power. I feel like to say, I did a bad thing. I did a thing that hurts people. I didn't understand. I didn't have the knowledge. There was a failing or a flaw, and I see it. I recognize it. I apologize for it. And here's how I'm rectifying it. And if we could start doing that just across the board for just everybody, it would really change. I mean, I think it separates the people who are truly powerful and truly like within themselves and standing upright. And, you know, like that gives me a lot of hope when someone's able to do that, which is why I love like AOC, because she is someone who is consistently like, oh, I said something wrong. Let me fix it. Here's what I meant. Or this, you know, that kind of, you have a face, Tonya. What is it?
No, so as a storyteller, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you.
Uh-huh.
I think that what the red does is they go, yeah, I did a bad thing and I don't care. And that to some people is a lot of power. Like Ford said to him, do you have empathy for Black people's pain and suffering? And he was like, you drinking the Kool-Aid, man. You believe that? No, I don't feel that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
the kind of power to some people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, then we need to have some conversations about what power really is. But go ahead, Lilli.
There's been this allowance recently, right, of admittance and acceptance of hatred and it being okay. And people being able to come out of the woodworks who have been there forever, and the hatred has been there forever. But this allowance to say, this is who I really am, and I'm actually okay with it, and now I can raise my racist flag high because the president tells us that that's okay. And so there is this level of admittance.
Agreed. And
now
I
we just need to get to the rectifying part.
No.
This isn't right, and we should change it.
You know, as I said, for me as a storyteller, I try to be on everybody's side. And it's like, for me, it's great when people tell the truth. Honestly, I've always felt like I'm more comfortable with a Southern white supremacist than I am with a Northern liberal.
Right?
White supremacist is clear. You can count on them to do certain things. The Northern liberal is not even clear with themselves. And when push comes to shove and they have a choice that's about self-preservation, they're going to choose themselves. That's just normal human nature. And because they aren't even aware of it themselves, you can't trust them.
No.
They don't even know themselves. And there's a beautiful podcast now called Nice White Parents, New York Times.
Oh, good.
And it talks about how all of these quote, progressive parents are why New York City schools are not integrated. That New York is the number 1 or number 2 most segregated school system in the country, because the school system caters to these white parents saying, this is what I want, and they speak all of this, I want this, and I want this integration, and I want diversity, I want this, and then when the choice comes for them to do it, they don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So right, it makes me think of, like, you know, if I see somebody with a Confederate flag on the back of their truck, I know I'm not going to go over to them and ask them for a favor. But Karen and pops on a bird watcher who you think maybe you could trust and is a quote unquote liberal, who actually wants to cause harm to us in a public park during the day in New York City. Those are the people that scare me the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, I just was going to go walking with a friend in her neighborhood back here in Pennsylvania. And I hadn't been there in years. And it's a wealthier neighborhood. And I drove up and I just start seeing signs on everybody's lawn, not just like 1 or 2, and also a Biden, no Biden, only Trump, Pence. And we, you know, like we trust our police officers, you know, like all Blue Lives Matter, like all sorts of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, we fundamentally disagree on some things, which would be fine if it didn't endanger me, but it endangers me. And so I'm not going to be here. And we had to go someplace else. I was like, we gotta go. I don't want to put myself in that position, but I'm glad that I knew so that I didn't, you know, like you said, there's no wolf in sheep's clothing in that situation. It's just, there's the wolf. And I said, okay, no, thank you, wolf.
So I got to play devil's advocate again. 116 million people, I think, don't vote every year. Right now, we're in the greatest shift of wealth in history. The poverty. There are companies, there are individuals in the world who could fund every American's salary for life. People are so desperate. People are homeless. They are sick. They have no medical care. Just because you see a Trump thing on somebody's lawn does not tell you anything about their politics. Right now, with people with no unemployment and no money, Trump Pence could go, $50, you can put this on your lawn. $50 is a lot of money for people right now.
Right.
Wow. See, I would have never even thought that.
That's how they send out, you know, even for the rallies, they pay people to show up at those rallies. Not even paying them very much, but that's how we are already in a feudal society. We are a failed state. People cannot support themselves. They don't have the food. They don't have the work. They don't have the houses. We have, as a nation, have failed. We are not a first world nation anymore.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say though that I think that this very rich neighborhood that I was in, like, they probably weren't taking the $50, but maybe, I don't know. They're not needing the $50.
My response to you in your telling of this story.
Yeah.
What springs to my mind is, why were you afraid? And I guess what actually springs to my mind is, what am I afraid of? And I don't think I'm afraid of anything. There are things that I dislike. There are things that I know are uncomfortable. But in terms of people and situations, I find that I'm never afraid. I find that, you know, I really, you know, there's some cowboy movie where I wish I could remember the movie, where the Native American person says to the soldier, "Today is a good day to die." And I really kind of live that way, because first of all, I'm a Black man in America, and I got to know that when I go out, it could be a good day to die.
Yes.
And so that is how I greet the world. That is how I greet assholes who I know are fucking racist and who hate my guts. I don't go up and, you know, try to, you know, kiss them or nothing, but I'm not afraid of them motherfuckers. and I'm not going to stop doing anything because of that I want to, that I want to. There are times that, you know, I say, well, you know, I'm just not going to submit myself to that or whatever. But it's never fear. It's never. I would look a motherfucker straight in the eye as he pulled the trigger and spit in his eye, because I just don't have. I can't afford to have fear. I can't.
I want to respond to that in a few ways. I live my life that way too. I'm like, it's how I perform. It's like every time I go out there, I'm giving it all out there. I could just die. That is, I think what's my greatest power is that I'm willing to die in every moment. And I really have thought of that as a power place. And then I watched this horror movie the other day called 1BR. And in this, it's very good. It's kind of, to me, I describe it as like, it's kind of like America in a way right now, what I hope my movie's going to be as well. And death wasn't on the table. You were going to go along with their group, or they were going to cause you severe pain. You didn't have a choice about being in their group. They were going to make sure you could not kill yourself, but they were going to cause you so much pain to you psychologically surrender to what they want. Now, that for me was the first time in my life where I went, oh shit, that would get me. And I think the privilege you have is that you're a man. And for us as women, we know that there are many things that men will do to us that we wish we would have died. Because what they will do, what the fear we walk in because they're men is much greater. Lady, any thoughts about that?
Look, the living torture is real. Okay, been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. So, yes, I agree.
I totally hear and embrace and accept that.
Yeah, I used to tell my children, if somebody grabs you, tell them to kill you now. Because if they take you away, it's going to be much worse. Don't go nowhere with nobody. Make them kill you right there on the spot.
I think women in America, I have a pretty constant fear. It's not disabling, but it's what protects me. My fear is important because I don't feel invincible. I feel very fallible. And knowing that is important. It helps me make the right decisions. It helps me know I can't walk down that dark alley at night. It helps me know I should come home biking at a certain hour. You know?
Yeah.
For me, as a woman, as a Black woman, is a survival mechanism.
Gavin DeBecker has an amazing book called The Gift of Fear, and how fear is an instinct that does tell you, don't go down that alley. He even says it works in our humor. He says there have been so many times when, you know, like the postal worker who got fired last week sends a package and someone goes, I wouldn't open that. That's probably a bomb. And it's a bomb. that is an instinct. He calls it an instinct of knowing things, you know, like when I first wrote this movie and a year ago, you know, some people who read it were like, yeah, that's a little far-fetched. And so when I was thinking of how we were going to score it, Keith Gold, who scored Selma, is scoring the movie. And we were going to do this string quartet, you know, he's getting, you know, all this kind of, you know, the scary sounds of strings, but also just kind of playing counterpoint, because at the time people thought what I was saying in my movie was far-fetched. Now what I'm saying in my movie is everyday life. It's not, it's like it's a documentary. It's literally a documentary. And so it's like, now we're changing the score to be much more intense and, you know, in this sense of the urgency and the revolution of it, because the world has changed in the years since I wrote this and made it. It's no longer people thinking of it as a dystopian future. It is what we're living right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. All right, guys. Well, we're actually over time at this point. I would probably not going to ask any questions because we're so over time. But I want to thank you all for joining us. I've learned a lot in this conversation. I always do anytime I'm talking with Tonya. And I want to say thank you to Chuck and Lilli for joining in. And also just like lots of pearls. You know, Tonya, do you have anything that you want to say as a closing, as a sign off for this?
You know, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Hopefully we'll get out this fall. Red Pill Movie 2020 are the handles for the film. And I can't wait to bring it to you. I want to say to Chuck, who I know is going off to do a movie, be safe.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Okay, there's no people gonna lie when they say they're practicing safety. Because I'm going to tell you that as I was coming here to do my thing, you know, I had not left my house. I've not had a COVID test in 4 months. And I was about to get on a plane for 15 months, a car to the airport, in the airport, on a plane. And I started thinking, you know, I just started feeling sick just because, because I was doing things I hadn't done. And then I started thinking, well, what, you know, because they're asking, do you have a fever? Do you have a, I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell the truth because then they'll send me back. And then I got to do it again. And I started thinking, if I'm just feeling that and I'm not sick, what about people who are really sick?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that guy on Batman, Robert Pattinson, who was playing Batman, come out with COVID? Somebody wasn't telling the truth about what they were doing.
Right.
He was having a party, or he brought somebody wasn't telling the truth. They wasn't in their pod or their bubble. Because for the lead to come down with COVID, just, you know what I'm saying?
Right. I hear you.
Don't trust the honor system.
I'm not thrilled about leaving my bubble because I've been in the bubble since the pandemic joined the rest of the shit show that's going on. So I'm not thrilled about getting on anybody's plane. I'm not thrilled about being on set with a bunch of motherfuckers I don't know. I'm not thrilled about that at all. But they made a motherfucking offer you can't refuse. And
oh, damn. Like that.
like that. And but your point is well taken. I am going to be safe.
Yeah.
Going to be extremely safe. I may not even take my mask off to do the scene. I'm going to say, you know what? My character would wear
Write it in.
I think.
Write it in. We gotta talk about this.
Right.
Well, I'm wishing all of you health and safety and everything that you do. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Just blessings and light to everybody. And we will be doing these conversations with new guest artists every Thursday. Might be a different time. We're talking about that in a second.
Okay.
We're gonna have a conversation about that. But thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Marissa. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.